morning. North Tongue experienced some of this as well on Friday when the district offices were attacked. The district chief executive and his team's offices were attacked. Not just that, but people were terrorized. Talk to us about that. How are people coping today?
Well, good morning. As you've rightly said, at the dawn of Friday, 25th September, we were the scene of an invasion, which was a violent one. The Mefa police station, Aveime police station, were totally ransacked. The police overpowered by these invaders. They managed to break into the armory and took weapons. And that's very troubling at this point because the latest discussion I've had with the commander of the joint response of military and police who were seeking to maintain the peace indicate that these weapons remain at large. Only one has been retrieved. At the Aveime police station, for example, they took away 15 assault rifles, AK-47, and 5 pump-action guns. At the Mefa police station, they took 2. And remember that the Divisional Police Commander's detachment, which was on its way to reinforce the already few police personnel who had been taken hostage, they were also ambushed, overpowered, and their weapons were taken. So these invaders at this point have quite a huge cache of weapons that have not been retrieved. We also are grappling with the fallouts. But yesterday, the latest casualty was reported. You will recall that I had indicated that governments claim that only one person was killed, though one life is one too many. The reports I'm receiving from my constituents indicates that it's far more than that. Indeed, I've received reports that at least 3 people died in the crossfire. The second body has been found yesterday in the Nyatiko area. A gentleman called Aram Atichogbi. That will confirm what constituents have been telling me. It's important that we take our time to investigate this matter, to know exactly the extent of casualties, to know exactly who these invaders are, who is sponsoring them, because they clearly are now radicalized. They're very sophisticated. They are marksmen, because to be able to overpower 2 police stations, and this was well coordinated, simultaneous attacks, to be able to overpower a detachment that was coming in to reinforce and show superior firepower and meet your targets so precisely, with precision, and have the police commander and 4 other police personnel injured with gunshot wounds. Clearly, this matter is no longer, just some comic relief where, a few people don't seem to be sure about what they are doing or what they are saying. The regional minister has indicated that we now have about 5 offshoots because we have identified at least 3 different flags. So what is clear is that probably Papavi's group has mutated. You now have splinter groups. You have many other miscreants who are seeking to take advantage of so-called secessionist agenda. And Kojo, what even troubles us in North Tongue is that if you look at the original Western Togoland map, we have never been a part of this whole Western Togoland. Indeed, it's people speak as though it's a Volta region threat. It's not. The Western Togoland map entails multiple regions. There are parts of Bono, parts of northern, parts of Savannah, parts of Upper East, parts of Togo, parts of Burkina Faso, parts of Ivory Coast. If you look at the original map,
this is something we have observed and actually discussed at length. What is reaching us this morning is about the attacks in Ho, the capital of the Volta region, where we are told that right at the center of the city, an SDC yard has been attacked overnight, and drivers who were spending the night there were beaten up, and a bus has been burnt down. How does this impact for you, from your perspective, on security in the region? This is the capital, and that's the center of it.
I mean, it confirms what some of us have been saying consistently, that the national security response has not been adequate. You see, right from 2-3 years ago, when this group emerged and started hoisting flags and claiming to be, delimiting parts of the Volta region and parts of Ghana, for that matter, we expected that there will be some ruthlessness to end this. The response will be very firm, and we expected that intelligence will be ramped up. These are all signs that we have an intelligence failure. If you have this group now having been radicalized, they've now trained people, and clearly you have very, very, sophisticated, well-skilled person who have military, training involved in this, and you're seeing now that they remain fearless. And if you look at what has happened in Ho overnight, we are picking reports that the sheer bravado, and this is near the RCC, if you know that location very well, the Regional Coordinating Council. And at the time that we expect that intelligence will be high, and that with all the redeployment of soldiers into the region and further police and Navy personnel, yet this group is so emboldened to do what they are doing. It tells you that the national security response has to change. And we continue to appeal to His Excellency the President as Commander-in-Chief and Chairman of the National Security Council, that he needs to speak to these matters. He needs to realize that, look, this is a republic which is under threat. I mean, if you look at what is happening now in Cameroon, what happened in Algeria, how Boko Haram started and all of that. These are threats that you don't take lightly.
Right.
And honestly, Kojo, a lot of my constituents and indeed residents in the Volta region are now living in fear. Nobody knows what is next, where they are going to strike, and we are not hearing successful, reports of the national security apparatus foiling these attacks, and arresting them even when they attempt it. If you look at what happened in North Town, for example, many hours, we started calling from 2 a.m. The attack started at 1:40 a.m. It was way after 9 a.m. that, we saw a response.
Yeah, indeed. And yes, there have been a lot of discussions about the security services response to this. I want to engage you more on that. If you don't mind, though, I'd like for you to stay with us while we get the very latest from Ho. Our correspondent, Fred Kwame Asare, is there. He's on the scene. Fred, good morning. Thank you for making the time. Tell us, what exactly do you see right now?
Good morning. I am at the STC yard in Ho at the moment. Well, I should report that one of the buses that operates Ho Accra for the intercity STC has been completely burnt down. All installations in the vehicle has been burnt down. When I spoke to the driver, he mentioned that he heard some gunshots about 2 a.m. This dawn. So he rushed to the gate and I realized that there were some young men heading into the yard. So they pointed the gun at him, asked him to go on his knees before they proceeded to touch the vehicle. And the vehicle registration number is ZG405419. There was another vehicle parked close to the vehicle that has been burnt down. They also had portions of 8 windows burnt down. So as we speak, military men are at the scene at the moment. About 20 of soldiers or military men have been brought to the scene and they have corroded the area, monitoring the situation. We spoke to the manager of the station and he mentioned that as of now the won't be operating for some time. The drivers here are traumatized, so they would have to wait for a while before they resume operations. However, there are residents gathered here and then wondering why people should take the laws into their own hands and then head to the center or the station of the Intercity STC bus and then flame up or burn cars down. However, we are having reports that these people are suspected to be members of the Western Togoland secession group, but then the driver was not able to confirm if truly these people are members or if they mentioned that they are members of the secession group.
Right, okay, that's important. So the group didn't actually declare their identity while they carried out this act?
According to the driver, that was what he told us. That is what the driver told us.
Right, thank you. Now, Fred, what is the state of the drivers who were beaten up? Have you been able to interact with them or learn anything about their condition? Hello, Fred? Right, it would appear we've lost our connection with Fred Kwame Asare. We're learning... hello, Fred? Right. While we seek to reconnect with him, interesting development if you just joined us. We are learning that overnight there was an attack in Ho. At the very center of the city, some young men armed stormed the STC yard, the Intercity STC yard, asked the attendants to go on their knees, proceeded to burn one of the STC buses, the Intercity STC buses, and then left after beating up some of the drivers who were spending the night on the compound. We're learning more as our correspondent Fred Kwame Asare describes the scene of chaos and destruction this morning. One bus burnt completely, another one damaged by the flames, and a state of heightened security as the military take over this location. Security is tight, as we are learning at this place, but of course this is following the attack overnight. Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa is the Member of Parliament for North Tongue. He's on the line with us. We'll be learning more from him in a moment, but I believe we have Fred Kwame Asare back. Fred?
Yeah, hello?
There you are. Okay, so I was asking about the condition of the drivers who were beaten up. Have you either seen them or heard of their condition from their colleagues?
They sustained minor injuries. The driver we spoke to mentioned that he went to the hospital earlier to check himself before he got back here. So they didn't sustain any severe injuries that maybe they would have to be admitted at the hospital. They just suffered some minor injuries. So they are back to the station, but then they are traumatized and then mentioned that they can't work for now.
Did they say anything about the attackers and whether or not they explained why they were attacking them?
Repeat the question, please.
Did these drivers who have been beaten up, did they say anything about their attackers? Did they pick up why the attackers were, attacking them?
Did they mention why the attackers attacked the station, you mean? Why the group came to attack the station?
Why? Yes, because they were beaten up by these attackers, right?
He couldn't rightly say. He just said that when he opened the door, or when they opened the main gate, they pointed a gun at him and asked him to go on his knees before they proceeded to undertake their operation, that is burning of one of the buses here. So he didn't rightly mention why the people came to the station to burn the bus. But then I think perhaps because he's traumatized at the moment, he was not able to give us more details. So we are relaxing for him. When he's okay, maybe in the next hour or two, we'll speak to him again. Perhaps he would give us additional information. Okay,
Fred, tell us about this location. We understand this is right in the heart of Ho, in the banking district, in the commercial district. You are surrounded by institutions, private organizations, and other security sensitive venues. Am I right?
Yes, the whole Intercity STC bus station is located right in the heart of Ho. We call this place the Civic Center. This is where all activities go on in the center of the town. I should say that, yes, like you rightly mentioned, it's surrounded by other institutions. We have Just opposite it is a filling station, Total filling station. Just behind it is the Municipal Assembly shopping center, where we have various shops there. Also, there are some banks around, I should say, and then behind it leads. Behind it is the road that leads to the Central Market. So this place is a very important place in Ho. When it comes to Ho, I believe one of the places you would know is the Ho Civic Center.
Right. And what are you picking up from commuters who are waking up to these scenes of destruction in the center of their city?
You mean the security services?
No, Fred, the commuters, those who are waking up, going to work this morning, the people of Ho, how are they reacting to the attack?
Well, people of Ho are shocked. They are surprised people could take the laws into their own hands and then engage in such activity. They went on Friday when that incident happened yesterday. I went around town to speak to some people, and then they mentioned that it was undemocratic for residents to take the laws into their own hands and then go about attacking government installations. This morning, people were gathered here and then wondering why people should just go to an installation or a station being operated by the government and engage in sex exercise. So they've condemned the activity and then mentioned that security services should up their games and then beef up security at the government and private installations to ensure that these activities do not take place again.
Fred, thank you for that. Thanks for that update. If you just joined us, news reaching us here on Joy is that there's been an attack overnight in Ho, the very center of the city, at the Intercity STC yard. Armed men are said to have broken into the yard, beaten up the driver spending the night there, held the security guard at gunpoint while they set a bus on fire. There's extensive fire damage to that bus and another. And this morning, we are learning of a heavy security presence in the area. This is a sensitive location in the center of Ho, and the story continues to evolve. Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa is a member of parliament for North Tongue. His constituency suffered some attacks as well on Friday, and the people continue to be affected by it. We're interacting with him this morning. Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa, this recent attack in the center of Ho is certainly causing some concern. We're learning now that there is a heavy security presence there, but it is still yet to be determined who these men were and why they attacked this station. As a member of parliament and a member of the Volta Regional Caucus, how concerned are you by these developments?
I mean, absolutely concerned, and indeed, Kojo, this is really, really traumatic stuff. I am getting very curious why people who claim that they want to delimit and take over one region or some geographic location will seek to wreak so much violence on the very people that they are seeking to lead in the very unlikely event that they succeed. It doesn't make sense to me. What have innocent Voltarians using an STC facility done to these people that they will wreak so much havoc and bend down the bus, engage in such violent activity, arson and shootings as happened in my constituency. It is the reason why I am saying that we need a thorough investigation. Our national security apparatus should be up and doing. We have seen elsewhere in other jurisdictions, history teaches us that sometimes it can be used, by other elements. A particular agenda can be used by other elements to pursue other agendas. Look, we are currently grappling with terrorists because of what happened in Libya, what is happening in Burkina Faso. They are all over the place in the West Africa and Sahel region. They are up for high. Anybody who doesn't wish Ghana well can engage these persons, pay them. They have weapons already and can foment trouble. So I don't want us to just, on the surface, every violence that is recorded, we just simply conclude that they are probably secessionists? What if, other evil elements are trying to hide behind, so-called secession to just destabilize the Volta region, destabilize our country? At this point, our intelligence should go deeper, and we should be up and doing. I know that the Volta region, because I was there yesterday, I'm there every day. We even have a meeting with the regional minister at 11:30, the Volta caucus in Parliament. We're meeting the Volta regional minister at 11:30 this morning, so we're on our way there. We do know that there's heavy military and police presence in the region. How is it that despite this heavy presence, right from the entrance, that's my constituency, is the gateway to the region, and in the capital, you still have, these elements so brave and able to successfully carry out these attacks, and they always succeed in carrying out the attacks and leaving the scene before law enforcement arrives. Why is that? Can't we do better? Can't intelligence be ramped up so we can foil these things, or even be able to prepare to have them picked up in the process, so that we can know exactly those who are behind these things, what's their motivation, who is sponsoring them, who's gotten them up to engage in these violent acts. So there's far better we can do. The state must rise up to the occasion. So far, the state is not building confidence in the citizenry by its response level.
Right. Well, thanks for that. And one of the reasons why this matter is capturing the attention of all Ghanaians is because of the violent nature of it. This is not the first time we've heard of people seeking to secede. But the fact that it has now taken on violent dimensions, they have taken arms from police armories. And in fact, the group that attacked the STC was armed. For your constituents, what are your concerns? What are the big things on your mind right now as you think about the days to come?
Big things on our mind, it's really about how to have normalcy restored. There's considerable anxiety. Large sections of the constituency have been deserted. A community like Nyatiko, for example, the Batotogodo areas, you see that people are in flight because of the extensive security search that is going on. We have said that we remain friends of the security apparatus, and that they are welcome into our constituency, so that if these miscreants are still hiding anywhere, these security operations should be done in a way that the high professionalism, which we know our security agencies for, they can do it. They can draw deep from the high sense of professionalism, which has been globally acknowledged. We know it's a tough job, it's not easy, but we appeal to them that they should carry out their mandate. They are very much invited. We need them there to feel safer. However, in carrying out the operations, we will appeal to them that they should not be high-handed, and they should not, as it were, violate the dignity, the rights of our constituents.
Right.
I must also add, Kojo, that it is important for us to have confidence that we will see superior intelligence. We will begin to hear reports that these violent acts are being foiled. It is important to just restore confidence, because if you come to my constituency and you talk to a lot of Voltarians, they are not impressed at all about law enforcement and how continuously these people are able to carry out their threats and just walk away. And so far, a lot of the people being rounded up are people who were not the real perpetrators. People who may just come as bystanders, who were just curious, trying to see what's going on. They are not people who are carrying out these violent attacks. And as you said, they are now armed. They are now very sophisticated. They've been radicalized. We want the real elements picked up. They should be apprehended. Probably, whilst about to, or in the process. Then we know that, look, we are laying hands on the real perpetrators.
Right.
That will then build some confidence, and we can all be rest assured that this threat is receiving that level of seriousness and attention that it deserves. But we are really living in fear, Kojo, I can assure you. With this latest attack, we know the numbers are going to go up. You're going to have more soldiers deployed, more police deployed. And you know how that affects normal life, people who have to go to work, people who have to go to their farms and all of that. But we have said as leadership, the parliamentary leadership, that if we must have to bear with some little inconveniences now, make some sacrifices now towards some positive results. We want that when these deployments have been done, indeed, the right people will be picked up, that we will not hear, even as these deployments have been done, that these groups, these invaders, whoever they are, whether they are domestic terrorists, because clearly they seem to have all the traits of terrorists, the insurgency will not continue and be successful as we are seeing, because that then makes us very, very worried that even in the midst of all these deployments, these characters can still, wage successful attacks on us in the region. It leaves us really, really troubled.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel Okudzeto, a Blackwell Member of Parliament for North Tongue, for speaking to us this morning. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Right, now let's do some security analysis. Professor Kwesi Aning is the Director of the Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center here in Accra. Professor Aning, good morning. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, so this morning, this is the latest. An attack at the center of Ho by armed men who have burnt down state property. I want to start, if you like, with a definition. Are we now dealing with terrorists?
Well, I think that is a very loose, politically loaded question, or terminology, sorry. But also that in the present geopolitical space in which we occupy, classifying a group, a person, as terrorist, then give the state, extraordinary powers way beyond the normal realms of either political or military activities to then deal with this group as drastically as it wants. But it is clear to me that as a country, we haven't sort of thought through how to classify such groups. And I'm relating this to the flurry of statements and communiques and press statements since Friday. These groups have been classified as rebels, secessionists, anarchists. So I think official Ghana is struggling to come to terms with how to characterize this particular group. But precisely because there's a political dimension to it, we need to be careful about the designation that we give to the group. Now, from the report that I've read this morning, we need to disaggregate two things. One relates to attacking unarmed people, beating them up, tying them up. That is unacceptable and borders on the criminal. The second is the deliberate destruction of symbols, property, and then physical representations of the state. Now, when a group or an individual over time decides to strike a blow against the state, so if we take what happened on Friday, the attacks against the Abayime and the police stations, the seizure of the weapons, the stripping of the police or officials, that can be interpreted as striking a blow against the state because those are representatives of the state. Now, when you raise your hand against the state and its representatives, the response normally is that you are hounded down, not by the police, but by the armed forces. And therein lies the dilemma that we have. And I agree with the previous speaker that when an armed group carries out an attack or a set of actions against the state's routine operational response is to use overwhelming force to crush that group or to demonstrate that it has the capacity first to protect itself and its citizens, but more importantly, that no one group will pose an existential threat to its credibility. Now, in doing that, and as the previous speaker was saying, there may be collateral damage in which innocent bystanders will have their lives ruined, their properties destroyed, and then we have the unintended consequence of pushing previously innocent, neutral people into the arms of those that you want to fight against. So these are the challenges that we are going to face going forward. And I think having this conversation is very, very useful to help to clarify some of the thinking, the approaches, so that we can bring this under control as quickly as possible.
Prof, let's talk about the choice of target. Yes, it's in the center of who. That seems to be important. It's in the commercial district, so it is visible. But why STC? What would be your analysis of why this would be a desirable target for this group?
I don't think it is STC per se. I mean, of course, STC is a state institution. But I think this is a deliberate attempt to poke their finger into the eye of the Volta regional minister. Because on Friday, there were two things. His rhetoric was clear. We know where you are and we knew about your plans. This is the last time you will act. So this is a clear action that says, you can grandstand in public as much as you like, but we are in control. We have the flexibility, the speed, the capability, the intelligence, and the choice of potential targets. So one is a direct confrontation with the minister, demonstrating the hollowness of his rhetoric and his lack of ability to grasp the reality on the ground. Two relates to the statement issued by his RegSec and the flowery language and approach that sought to diminish the seriousness and the gravity of the problem that we are looking at. And the third, once more, is to say we have the ability, the space, the capacity to roam freely, even in your capital city. So it raises the question, or several questions, about the threat perceptions. What do we know about the capacity of these groups? And now there are three groups. Two of them have dissociated themselves from the violence, but one particular group has decided to escalate the confrontation. So what do we know about these groups? That is number one. Number two, what is the leadership structure? Number three, what are their capacities? Now, the information minister informed us that they were going to publish a list of those who fund them. That is a useful step. But historically, businesses function and they like unstable, ungoverned, ungovernable places where state capacity is weak. So identifying their sources of funding is useful, but it only tinkers with the larger problem. So there are a couple of things that we need to understand, as I've said. Leadership structure, the psychological makeup, their military capacity, training, source of arms flows. Then we come to the operational side, the choice of targets. And I think your question about STC is very relevant. What is the symbolism, or what are the messages that they seek to send by the choice of particular targets? So that is there. We need to also understand that in these two cases, on Friday and Monday, now both attacks on the police station, blockage of roads, delivery of speeches, all took a certain duration. So we are looking also at our response capacities. What speed do we need to be able to respond as quickly as possible? The question is that an infrastructure of the state, such as state transport, remain unguarded. Okay? So if we begin to plot all the towns where these actions have taken place, then the next issue that we need to consider relates to their geographical spread and their capacity to spread themselves so quickly without being detected. Finally, relates to one point, but having two possible, ancillary sides, is the impact of these actions. What is the impact on domestic sense of security and our capabilities and the quality of the intelligence? Because right now, Monday's actions have demonstrated that the public rhetoric about the quality of our ability to know and to prevent and also to take proactive action probably needs to be looked at. The second equally important impact relates to the international dimensions. We live in a terribly dangerous, bad neighborhood. Burkina Faso is being encircled, or Ouagadougou is being encircled. The Côte d'Ivoire has its problems. We have an election in the Côte d'Ivoire that is extremely dicey and dangerous. Mali has sent a clear signal that rebels can threaten central government, and that can lead to all kinds of actions. Togo's elections have been very problematic. So the international dimensions of these actions and our slow responses send signals first to all the sub-state actor groups that are threatening the contiguous states to Ghana. But the second is a concern from the international side. Our reputation as a major troop contributing country and a police contributing country. Have we focused so much on international dimensions of peacekeeping that we've slightly taken our eye off internal operations? if these groups, as you correctly asked me, the type of designation that we give them, terrorists, rebels, anarchists, separatists, secessionists, means that it will have an impact on the doctrines that will guide the internal operations. So I think this is a conversation that we need to have, because irrespective of the differences that we have, we need a bipartisan political approach to this that fits up our, national support to provide critical information. Because if you look at the statement that has been issued, not a single hotline has been established. So we are using the same busy lines, and we can't get through. It is difficult to get through. So I think more conversation, more ideas, more support. But we need to change the narrative from one of dismissive self-confidence to one of the recognition that fits up a sense of Ghanaianness, a sense that we are together, and a sense that whatever our differences, we can talk about it to reach an amicable solution so that the peace that we are enjoying can continue.
Right. Prof, the President, as we're aware, is yet to speak about this. Is there a security benefit to the President, being heard on these matters at this stage? Or perhaps is it better strategy for him to stay out of it for other institutions to be communicating?
Well, I think my assessment is that the President should wait. You see, because he is the end of everything. When he speaks and reassures us, that is when his lieutenants have failed to deliver on their promises to him when he appointed them, that we will keep this country safe. And what you inherited, you will also hand it over when it's your time. So I'm sure the President by now is calling people and saying, now, you've got to give me an explanation for this. You've reassured me, you've reassured the people of Ghana that we are in control. No, they haven't. I don't know the distance between Ho and Adaime and Lepe and Gapong and all those towns. But a couple of days after reassuring me that you were in control, and a statement by your Regional Security Council, your town itself has been attacked, probably a couple of kilometers from your own official residence. I need an explanation. So the pressure from the presidency will be escalated, demanding and expecting that his lieutenant will deliver on public protection and security.
Now, sorry, forgive me.
Now, the day the president has to speak to us, then he's assured and he knows that his armed forces, his police, his intelligence services are in full control, and that he can assure us that whatever fear and uncertainty that we have faced, that period is over. So we should give him some time prior to speaking to us.
Right. Now, you talked about the normal expected response of the state when anything that is a symbol of the state is attacked in the way that we have seen, and that is to basically use the force of the military to hound and track down those responsible, just to demonstrate that the state ought not be attacked. There are those who are calling for engagement in this particular instance as the way forward by state. What's your advice in terms of security, considerations? Is engagement an option that the state should be considering right now? Does it send the right signal or the wrong one?
No, I think engagement is a crucial and a critical aspect of resolving what is now transforming over the past couple of decades into now a very serious armed threat. But as representatives of the state, we are very proud and we are reluctant in the first instance to be seen to be talking to a group or groups who have given us a bloody nose. So I myself, personally, I am pro-engagement. Now, as I said, there are three groups now. The Homeland Study Group, the Western Togoland Restoration Front, and then the People's Liberation Council. The WTRF and the PLC have all dissociated themselves from the actions that we are seeing. Therefore, what it means is that were we to get ECOWAS, the African Union, the UN, and a couple of our very seasoned diplomats who have done this elsewhere, quietly, backdoor, moving or beginning a series of meetings. It's going to be a long-term, tricky set of meetings. Because first we need to identify those who claim to be true representatives of these organizations. But prior to even getting there, the state must ask itself, what is the extent of the claims that these groups are making? Who do they truly represent? Their strengths, their networks, financing, all those things. And then a friendly government can create the space for the initial set of contact and to see how this zero-sum game that we are hurtling towards can be moved in another direction. So talking or exploring avenues for conversation, initial set of contact, is not negative at all. Far from it. It actually shows the strength of the state to say, look, probably over a long time, we've been dismissive about people's concerns and therefore contributed to people taking up arms against the state, because it's a long process from the frustration, the sense of exclusion, the anger, to actually taking up arms against the state.
Right.
But let me make this point. Criminal activity as political discourse cannot be allowed. You cannot murder, steal, beat up people. Those sets of activities that are against the laws of Ghana and are criminal cannot be accepted. And people cannot commit crimes as part of their political discourse and expect a wholesale forgiveness by the state.
Right.
That will be difficult. So we need, as I've said, a backdoor channel that begins to clarify all these things. But Friday to Monday, saturating the Volta region with troops, which is a natural response by the state, raises some of the concerns that the previous speaker was talking about.
Yes.
That in these things, we must be cognizant of the rule of law, the laws of engagement during conflict, and all those things. We don't want to push ordinary people into the arms of any of these groups because the state was heavy-handed. Burkina Faso, Mali, northern like Cote d'Ivoire, Niger, northeastern Nigeria have all faced these problems because of the state's heavy-handedness. Liberia and Sierra Leone faced these challenges also because of state response. So I think there are lots of lessons that we can learn from.
Right. If you just joined us, we're talking about the latest development in the Volta region. We are learning in the capital city Ho. Last night there was an attack on the Intercity STC yard, which is bang in the center of the city. Armed men attacked the yard, beat up the drivers who were spending the night there. They forced the security officer onto his knees at gunpoint and then proceeded to burn down a bus and of course caused damage to other property. The individuals have absconded, but this morning that STC yard is the scene of a heavy security presence as the military secures the place. So of course we are learning more and doing some analysis. Our guest for that this morning is Professor Kwesi Enin. He is the Director of the Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Prof, I'm hoping we can touch on perhaps two more things. First, the impact of this. You started to describe that, and I wonder if we can perhaps take it one step further and then talk about the way forward, the solutions. So regarding the impact, you've already mentioned that if there is heavy security presence in the Volta region, sort of in what might be perceived to be a heavy-handed response, that could have negative effects. I'm throwing in the other factor, which is the fact that this is an election year. Security-wise, what does that do? The presence of heavily armed state actors in an election year.
Well, this is not just an ordinary election year. And I'm happy you've thrown this into the mix, because what we've seen on Friday and last night dramatically challenges the perceived invincibility of the armed forces. Could you give me a minute to take our listeners through a couple of steps back?
Certainly.
The Ghana Armed Forces enjoyed fantastic, almost unbreachable reputation domestically, and you can see, particularly when the president urged the security forces to support the COVID lockdown, the public response to the performance, both of the Ghana Police Service actually, and the Ghana Armed Forces. And the Armed Forces clear signal to the public that they were supporting the Ghana Police Service and were responding to civil control and civil order. Subsequent to that, we saw a slight shift in the public response to the uniformed forces when the voter registration was undertaken. And once more saw the invincibility around the forces being challenged consistently. And I think His Excellency the President wanted to set up some committee of inquiry to look at excesses in the public response. So we saw hooting, abuse, throwing of stones, intimidatory tactics, not only by the uniformed forces against the civilian population, but actually a much more violent response from the civilian population against the uniformed forces. Now, that was a very dramatic shift in the relations, in the civil-military relations. This was compounded by the land issue in Nizit Senya or Ewutu, where 2 soldiers were arrested, maltreated, while their colleagues ran away. But if we had discussed with your producer prior, I would have asked you to play the tape when these soldiers were arrested and they pleaded for their lives and the utterances that they gave. That they were basically just ordered from the top to come and do what they were doing and that they didn't know. Now, when the populace begin to lose respect and begin to challenge the invincibility of the armed force and per extension the general uniformed forces, that becomes a problem. And therein lies the connection between what is happening now, the challenges with the voter register that has been displayed, and the role that we expect the uniformed forces to play. Now, when you have a senior officer who leads his men on a route march and in admonishing them, tells them that there's a direct correlation between their abstinence for sex and effective performance, then that is very problematic. And once more, sends a signal that there is very little appreciation and understanding of the operational environment within which some of these uniformed forces will have to work and act. So we have a couple of months, the whole of October, November, 2 months. We need 2 months to recreate this sense of effectiveness, this sense of collaborative relationship with communities, so that prior to, during, and after the voting itself, the uniformed forces will be seen as credible and their orders neutral. At the height of the 2012 elections, when the Supreme Court petition was being heard, we undertook a study across this country. And one particular question that struck us, and the answers that we got, was that across the country, communities said, the only institution we trust to protect us when there are demonstrations and riots is the armed forces. That credibility and invincibility we can see is being challenged, and that is disturbing.
Indeed. Right, Prof. Let's move to the final thing, which obviously is the solutions here. And by the way, if you just joined us, once again, breaking news this morning: there has been an attack on an intercity STC yard in the center of Ho by a group of armed men. They beat up the drivers who were spending the night there, forced the security officer at gunpoint to surrender the space to them, after which they burnt down a bus and other property. They've absconded, and this morning there is a heavy security presence at that location. Professor Kwesi Enin is helping us with analysis as we delve into the security implications of this and look into the future. And that is where we are right now, looking into the future. Prof, what's the proper route that the state ought to be navigating through this? And I don't want to leave it just to the state. Perhaps we can also talk to the people of the Volta region. What should be their response to this? How do they ensure that this matter de-escalates and that they and their families can stay safe?
I like your phrase, looking into the future. Probably we should add the crystal ball also.
Indeed.
So right now in my office, I'm going to look into my crystal ball and hopefully come with some ideas. Let's start with the citizenry. How can the state make ordinary people feel that they are part of Ghana Incorporated? This enterprise to build a cohesive, coherent, integrated, inclusive, and responsive state. Citizens must have a sense that irrespective of the challenges that they face or we all face, collective, collaborative approaches and dialogue is always the best. You know, the allure of taking up arms has been propagated in Ghana for the last 30, 40 years. Okay, from foot soldiers to serial callers to vigilantes to militias. Okay, our politics and our political discourse narrative praises and glorifies violence. But what we are seeing must make us take a step back. So citizens themselves must recognize their abhorrence or signify their abhorrence towards violence and a willingness to preach, talk, and live peace. Of course, the state as the stronger party in all this, and the proud party that feels aggrieved must show maturity and to say the essence of statehood is to integrate and to deliver public service goods. And those goods are about security, development, stability, peace, whatever you want to call it. But this is a dialogic, collaborative relationship. None of these two major actors can seek and work towards peace alone. Sometimes we need a lubricant, an institutional lubricant, to help these two competing but necessarily collaborative parties to merge them towards peace. And I think in Ghana we have quite a number of institutions. And here the National Peace Council is key. It's contributed to helping with the vigilante problem, not wholly resolved, but it's a work in progress. The Ghana National Small Arms Commission is there. Guns are awash in the country. We need to authorize them, make them into a proper commission so that they can really start the process of retrieving the guns. Because I'm a strong believer in hybrid forms of governance, whether security, economic, social, or political. I think chiefs can play a critical role here. A deepening engagement between chiefs or traditional leaders, our religious leaders, women's groups. You know, when countries face critical challenges of survival, it is women as individuals and as groups around which peace processes and the survival of communities cohere. So we've got to bring women right into the processes of reconciling those who feel suspicious about each other. So we can do it if there is that openness, that desire to say, as a key international player in the peace industry. We've been to Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, now Burkina Faso is on our doorstep. We saw Rwanda We've been to East Timor, Lebanon, Sinai. The letters are that negotiations, talking is difficult. It's much easier to make enemies than to remain friends.
Yeah.
But we need to remain friends. We need to mediate. And we need to recognize that it will be a long, difficult, uphill process. But it is cheaper and it brings more positive results in the short to long term.
Yeah. Prof, this has always been an education. And just before I let you go, if I'm being signaled that our time is up, but this I think is important. So I'm hoping I can get a brief answer from you on this last thing. Now that we've observed these groups in action twice, what would be your assessment of perhaps what would be an attractive targets to these groups going forward? Who should be more on guard? Should government officials traveling around in government vehicles, for example, be more on their guard? Should there be other state institutions where security is beefed up? What do you think would now constitute attractive targets to these groups?
Anything that would trumpet their military capacity, any target that they can successfully attack that will trumpet their views. And that means any targets all over the country. So
not just in the Volta region.
Not just in the Volta region. Any critical infrastructure owned by the state of Ghana is a potential target. And that is why we need to bring communities into the preventive side of things. Where do they report to? What do they need to look out for? This is going to be a long uphill battle, but together with communities, proper education and information, we can turn the negative tide.
Prof, I think that's perfect summation for us. We very, very much appreciate your time with us. It's always an education, isn't it, when you speak to Prof.
Kucho, it is. It's been, a very insightful conversation, speaking to Professor Kwesi Aning. And he said lots of important things. Okay, the fact that following the events on Friday, the Volta Regional Minister, talked about how they picked intelligence and how for the last time they're going to be outwitted by these persons. And then they decided to strike again, and this time round, no other place but who?
Right in the center.
The regional capital. And so he's talked about the need to use, state force to hound these persons, but also engage them.
Yeah.
So he calls for a two-way approach to dealing with this particular situation. And he's called on the state to engage communities and engage chiefs in ensuring that we are able to deal with this. And finally, in ending, he talks about how, when you asked him the question about whether they could attack other installations, which installations they may attack, he says any installation belonging to the state that would actually send that message or send that signal that you need to do something for us or we mean business. And Kojo, briefly before, I know we have to go for some bit of messages, but look, I need to say this because as somebody who's lived in Ho for a very long time, and somebody, originally I am from Mpoho, but anytime I sung the Yale of my school, Mali Yale, it says, Mutual Volta, we're from Volta. Nyansa lemiasi, Jinyanu lemiasi, Akufia melemiamo, Mauli Glimida. So we're from Volta, we're intelligent, we have patience, you know how to go about things, patiently, we're not lazy, God is with us all the time. Whenever I sang that, I didn't sing that recognizing that I wasn't from this place.
You felt a part of the community.
I always sang this, feeling a part of that community. And any time I have been to the Volta region, I have always felt a part of that community. In fact, I say I'm a whole boy because that's where I grew up. And I go there all the time. Just over the weekend I was there and I saw the military presence there. On Friday, Selim called from Hoho and he said one thing. And in our private conversation, sorry if I bring this on air, but he said, and we all agreed, it was one of the most important callers for that day. He says, we need education on all of this.
Absolutely.
The misinformation is too much. And I started the conversation on Friday when I said, for many of us who grew up in Ho, the perception we had, or what we considered as fact, was that after 50 years, there was going to be another plebiscite to decide the fate of Western Togoland. Even then, at that time, we only thought it was the Volta region. We didn't know that other parts of the country, be it the Dagomba areas, the Mampusi areas, and the Gonja areas, were
as
part of
Mr.
it.
Blackwell pointed out again
Exactly.
this morning. Yeah.
So when on Friday they struck the first time, and the conversation was, well, North Tongue is not even part of Western Togoland or British Togoland. They now move to Ho, which is part of British Togoland. The signal they send in there is that, okay, if you think we got it wrong the first time, we're now coming home.
They're marking their territory.
Marking their territory. We're coming to where we believe is part of British Togoland.
Indeed.
And the Civic Center, I mean, just as Fred was saying, now that's the central, in Accra we say that's the central business district. So it's like going to, the central business district.
In Accra.
So you have all the banks, Vodafone offices are not so far away from that particular Ghana Commercial Bank, National Investment Bank, APSA. They're all very close there.
No doubt there are other state institutions as well.
Not
Courthouses.
Not far away, you would find the municipal hospital. You would find the Volta Regional, the courts.
Yeah.
And you would go to Ola Senior High, Ola Girls Secondary School. And then the market, which the minister says was an attempt to burn down, and they failed that attempt. Okay. So if there's one thing that I think must be done, and yesterday there's some people who came around, wanting to explain this issue in detail.
Yes.
And they raised certain questions. So you realize that, look, this is just an armed struggle. It also involves indoctrination. And so even if you want to crush these persons, you also need to get people to unlearn the things they've learned over these years.
Yeah, we are heavily relying on our security and intelligence services to step up their game and protect citizens. Professor Inin made an important point just before we go. He made an important point that even the classification of this group has security implications. It's not so simple as simply calling them terrorists. But then Professor Inin also went further to describe the characteristics of this group so that you yourself can figure out what they are. These are people who are now willing to attack unarmed people. Now, this is important. There's a difference between somebody being convinced that they must fight for a right of their own and they must fight an oppressor for that right. There's a difference between that type of person and a person who believes that in order to make their point, even innocent people must suffer. That's where we are right now. Okay, Professor Inin talks about the fact that they are deliberately destroying symbols, property, and representations of the state. Okay, so these are characteristics of this group that you can, use to make your own classification of who they are. But for someone to publicly or officially classify them as terrorists, that in itself has its implications in terms of security. There is a lot for us to unpick on this matter and more to learn. So stay with us. We're going to come back to this, but we want to hear your voice on this matter as well. You've now heard from our regional correspondent, Fred Kwame Asare. You've heard from Mr. Samuel Okudzeto Blackwell, who is an Honorable Member of Parliament for North Tongue. You've heard from Professor Kwesi Inin, who is a security analyst, and he certainly broke down a lot of issues for us. Now I wonder what you are thinking. Now I wonder how you are thinking of these recent attacks by an armed group on the STC facility in Ho, and of course the beating up of the unarmed drivers who were there. I want to know what you think, and we'll explore that and more when we come back from these all-important messages.